Hear this? Sound. Yes, we got it. All right. Good morning. Happy Friday, everybody.
Good morning.
Talk about move my cheese. My cheese has been moved. Do you guys remember that book? Angie, did you ever read that book? Who Moved My Cheese? Who is it? Sniff and Scurry. They're two little mouses and they run around this maze looking for cheese. And they find the cheese station. They get lazy and they eat all the cheese and the cheese is all gone. And somebody moved their cheese. So they got to run through the maze and find some other place. And it goes through this whole little story of these mice and how people have to get used to change. So long story short, my laptop crashed. I came out the other morning and it came back and said hard drive missing, which is bullshit because the hard drive was there. And went through all this stuff and Bob's been helping me and he finally got on Dell last night. They fixed it. So we swapped computers this morning. But here you are. You got me in person live in the training room today. So we're going to talk Master of the Contract Friday today. And we got a whole bunch of contract topics. I was talking to my neighbors this morning. I said, you know, the more sales we do, the more problems we get. And I was on the phone for a half hour last night with a customer who has a challenge. I mean, this guy is something. He's a victim and you have to deal with different types of people in different types of ways. So this guy, long story short, bought a house. It's a lease back. The seller's going to stay there. And he's signed out of state. The owner, the seller is now the tenant inside the house. So we gave the tenant the keys to the house. Well, this guy, you would have thought the world came to an end. How could this have happened? Bob, he called the police. He did everything to get his keys. I was like, dude, you want your keys? We'll send you keys. I'm coming down there to get them. Okay, fine. And then he raised hell with Rosa on the front desk for hours, raised with the agent for hours, called the police department. Oh, just a wacky nut. Then he went on with me. I said, sir, I don't understand. The problem was you didn't have keys. Now you have keys. Isn't the problem solved? No, it's not solved. It's not the problem. It's the intent. I said, oh my God. I feel sorry for his wife. Anyway, people are crazy. So the more contracts we do, the more problems we're going to have. So that being said, Mr. Simmons, how are you this morning?
Doing well. Good morning.
Let's start off on a levity note. The topic you brought to me yesterday about the new HOA rules in that apartment complex.
Give them a funny. Okay.
Seriously, this is how crazy the world has got.
Yeah. So we have an agent that is currently renting, and as she was walking her dog, she was approached to say that your dog needs to get a DNA test. So obviously she laughs, she chuckles, and the cost for the DNA test was $200. So they had to swab the dog just like they would do us, right? And then later on, she gets a notice and says that she has a fine. And the fine was because when the dog pooped, I guess she didn't clean up enough of it, and they did a DNA test until it was hers, her dog, and fined her $250.
That just puts me into a state of anguish. Talk about police state. So Angie, I want you to have your dog DNA tested. And when we find poop in a neighbor's yard or where it doesn't belong, we're going to test it. And if it's your dog, we're going to find you $200. So this brings me to one of our Master of the Contracts topics today, which is HOA and COA. Now, there is a law in Congress right now to make the HOA docs mandatory, just like condo docs. So I want to talk about that for a minute because it is important. And if we're going to be delivering customer service to our customers, we've got to protect them, right? So the condo docs are pretty clear. Joe Diener's done a great job mastering the new contract condominium addendum. Paragraph 10 has all this new stuff we have to do, including provided many minutes to the meetings. So in that apartment complex HOA, they've been talking about this DNA testing thing for a while. So it should be reflected in the minutes of the meetings. So if you were against that type of insane leadership, in my opinion, you would know it going in, right? Correct. So there's a move of it. So condominiums are simple. We talked about this yesterday. Jeff did a great job of the Beachmaker presentation here yesterday. If you missed it, we reported it. So that'll be online for you to watch. Condominiums, you got to give all the bylaws, all the documents, current documents, ask the seller to get them from the condo management company, get the most updated version. They have to be delivered to the buyer. And once the buyer gets delivery, they have 3 days to review them on a resale condo. It's 15 days on a new condo. Okay. So, and during that 3-day period, they can walk away for any reason they want. So what's our recommendation when you have a condominium putting on the market as a listing agent?
And make sure the HOA docs are attached to the MLS.
But the HOA docs, because the contract says that delivery to an agent is deemed as good as delivery to the customer. So by putting on the MLS, making them available to the buyer's agent, we've actually made them available to the buyer. So the buyer has 3 days from contract to cancel if they want to. But if we didn't give them it then, we give them a week later, they've got 3 days from a week later, which just delays the process. And we don't want that to happen. So good agenting means get the condo docs and all that stuff up front, which makes it important because there might be a lot of poop laying around. There is. Because we don't want delays to happen afterwards, right? When's the best time for a contract to die? Before it goes to contract. After that is while it's in the inspection period, and the worst time for a contract to have a problem is after closing, because then they bought the closing, right? So HOA docs, I want you to kind of treat them the same way. Ask the seller, even though it's not required right now, but it might be required in the near future, ask the seller to provide 6 months of the last HOA meeting minutes. What are you going to find in those minutes? You're going to get a tone of what the neighborhood's like, right? They're finding you for this. They're finding you for that. There's a radar speeding gun. There's all this other stuff is going on in the neighborhood that's going to be reflected in the minutes. And you can see what the people are bitching about. And if you don't like it, then don't go. But right now, you've got 30 days to review and you can cancel. So we got to make sure your HOA, but we don't have to give you the HOA docs. We have to give them to you within 30 days. We have to give you the notice. That's all you have to do. So that's it. Okay. All right. This is a big one. This came across, Chris brought this up yesterday, and it's a really important one we haven't talked about in a long time. Thomas, you and I talked about this last night. The special assessments.
Correct.
Right?
Yeah.
So we just had a deal where Open Door made an offer on one of our listings, which is fine. The Open Door agent checks special assessment box B. As a protocol, they check box B, which means seller shall pay all special assessments due prior to closing. Now, this house happens to be in an area like a lot of South Shore now, Waimama, Lesser Ruskin, they have a water and sewer special assessment because that's how the developer passed the cost on to the consumer. So that'll be shown in your non-ad valorem taxes on the tax bill. There's ad valorem, which is your property tax. And then below that is the non-ad valorem, which would be special lighting districts, tax bills, trash bills, things like that. But if there's a special assessment, which there was, and this special assessment is $290 a year for 25 years. So as a listing agent, I want you to write this down. I point to my head and say, write this down. That's interesting. It's funny because I'm used to looking at you on my screen. Now I got to look around this way. See, my cheese is just being moved all over the place. As a listing agent, if you get a contract with Box B, it's okay, but you better darn well make sure your seller knows whether there are special assessments or not. Because with Box B checked, it's a contractual term, and that seller's going to have to bring all current future years current and pay it off at closing. So in this case, there's 5 years left on a 25-year special assessment. The seller's got to bring $7,000 to closing to satisfy that term. Now, in this case, we caught it. So we're going to counter with Box A, which says
installments of the HOA until closing.
Seller pays up until closing, buyer pays after closing, which is fair, right? Unless you can slide with it. So I wrote down for you guys to remember, if it's our buyer, check box B. Try to get the seller to be responsible for all the assessments going forward and wipe it off our buyer's plate. And maybe the listing agent won't catch it. But if it's our listing, make sure box A is checked so we don't obligate our seller to pay fees in the future on a property they no longer own.
Correct.
So really pay special attention to the special assessment section of the contract, right? Check A, check B. A, if it's our seller, B, if it's our buyer, and maybe we'll win once in a while. That's what Open Door is trying to do, or Open Door is trying to do. And then, so this is what happened in this particular case. We went to the title company and asked for a preliminary closing statement, and they gave it to us. But this special assessment did not show up. Why didn't it show up? Do you remember?
You mentioned about when they do the title search,
Yeah.
sometimes it's not there.
We have to pay for the lien search in order for the lien search to come back. So if we do a preliminary HUD before closing and the lien search hasn't been paid for and collected, it's not going to show up. So in this case, it didn't show up because it happened so early in the process, the lien search wasn't paid for or done. So we have to ask those questions, right? And this is like master's level real estate, protecting our clients with things that are not normally said or talked about in real estate, but they come up in real life all the time.
Chris said that it was labeled as a water sewer impact fee, not special assessment, but that's how it's levied by the county.
Yes. It's levied by governmental authority.
Correct. And then Joe said, pull the tax bill when you're taking a listing to check that.
Yes. And that's why I said there's ad valorem, which is property taxes. And then below that is non-ad valorem, which will be some things that are not special assessments. But if you have any questions, raise your hand and say, what is this? And we'll clarify it. Okay. So that was number one. I wanted to share with you the drama that goes on with an escrow problem.
Right.
So Mike Reichenbach, we mentioned this last week, but I got to a head this week. I'm not going to share my screen. I'm just going to read the email. But oh my gosh, I can't read the number yet.
Yeah, I've been reading some of them for you.
22 chats. Oh my goodness. It's probably most about the poop because we all like to talk about
It did start off with that. Joe Aletto said he had OfferPad do this. It's called BOCC. Got the total payoff assessment. It was about $1,200. Board of Chamber Commercial. I don't know what BOCC is.
Board of County Commissioners. Board of
County Commissioners.
Yeah, there's liens. And then Mike just said, what if there's a lien? If there's a lien on the property, you can still list it. It just has to be satisfied at time of closing.
Correct.
Now, the problem is if the lien is greater than the seller's proceeds, then they can't close and you've committed a problem. You've created a problem for the seller. So we want to know what their lien, they should know. The leg had to be paid off at close. Yes, lien. Cool. All right. So back to my inbox. Okay. Well, Mike didn't do anything wrong. So Mike is an agent. He got a referral from Beggar's referral network agent to do a commercial transaction. Mike did everything right. I mean, really everything right. We had an initial deposit. We had an additional deposit. And then we had another deposit in the future, a big one. So we had a 5,000, a 5,000, I think it was a 35,000. And the buyer decided to cancel the contract before they made the $35,000 deposit. But Mike had written into the contract that all deposits are non-refundable as of October 28th. And the buyer tried to cancel after October 28th. So we're a transaction broker, so we can't put one party's interest to the detriment of another. And we're not the escrow agent. So now the escrow agent has a problem because the buyer wants their money back. The seller says, no, it's my money. And now there's a fight that's ensuing. So just to put some drama in your life, here's what the seller wrote us back. And this will, you know, I'm all into peace and happiness. This will ruin your day. And it really stresses out your life and makes your whole day get off kilter and throws you into a hole that is hard to climb out of. Mike, FYI, I am prepared to seek legal counsel and seek redress if necessary to capture the non-refundable deposit. There was a previous timeline established by all parties for roughly the end of March for me to be relocated and from the property. And I was prepared to meet that pre-established date no matter what. Plus, having already expended extensive dollars for that commitment to occur. So no matter the issue as to who, why, whatever, now that the purchaser has been nullified by whomever, those non-refundable deposits, I am expecting to cover my already committed costs and move off the property. Please treat this email as legal notice of my interest. So it's pretty strong. And that's enough to, you know, put a little scare. It has nothing to do with us. That's not a claim against us. It's 100%. Remember this, the contract is between the buyer and the seller.
Correct.
Purchase agents. In this case, we're transaction brokers, which there's no responsibilities at all. Right? So Mike talked to Danny, our attorney at Paramount Title, who's holding the escrow. And Danny's like, look, I can't make a decision. My hands are tied. I am bound by neutrality. So somebody, you guys have to work it out amongst yourselves or get a mediator or get a judge to tell me what to do with that money. Now, the challenge is we have 5,000, we have the other 5,000. He never made the 35,000. And this is where Master the Contract Friday comes in. And you can use these words and you'll notice this, my words will be verbatim what the contract says. It says breach of contract by buyer. The penalty for breach of contract by buyer is forfeitures of deposits paid and agreed paid. So when you make a promise to make a deposit, it's a promise. I promise to do this. And if you break your promise, you still have to fulfill on the obligation. So should this end up going, and this is $35,000 plus the 10, that's $45,000. It's worth fighting for. So this guy could get a judge. It'll end up in mediation. The mediator will scare the hell out of the buyer and they'll come to some settlement likely before it gets to a judge. But we're talking another couple $1,000 easy on both parties. And then the prevailing party is going to win attorney's fees from the other party. So once a mediator, which is the right way to go with this one, tells the parties the facts of this case, it's going to happen. So what can we do? And this is where I like to learn from ourselves. What can we do to stop this from happening in the future? We had a cool tool. Critical date timeline. Right? If you take the time to fill out the critical date timeline and then have a communication discussion with the consumer, don't just mail it to them or email it to them. Call them and say, look, this is what it means. These are the critical dates. This is the buyer's obligations. This is the seller's obligations. So critical dates are earnest money due, second earnest money due. There's options for third earnest money due. Those become critical dates. And if you really, I mean, let's face it, most of us don't have, we're not Amy Camasso doing 9 deals in a month, right? But we have 2 or 3 deals maybe going, and it's not that much to plug your calendar, change the color of the date, put a reminder, pop up 24 hours in advance. Hey, remember, you got to make this deposit. And nowadays, making a deposit is so easy, especially through Paramount Title, because all you got to do is log on to P Title FL Florida, ptitlefl.com. That's it. And go to the page and hit make escrow deposit, put in your routing number on the bottom of your check and your account number, send the money. Done. You don't have to get in a card, have to write a check, don't put it in the mail, nothing has to happen. You could do it on your phone. It's that simple.
Also,
So,
if you use a transaction coordinator, they do it for you. So
yes,
all you have to do is add it to your calendar.
well, they can do that for you too.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes, buyer still owes since they agreed to pay the current and future escrow because the penalty is forfeiture of deposits paid and agreed to be paid.
But the seller also needs to know that
getting the money from the seller, from the buyer, when they haven't placed it. Now, when it's in escrow, the judge can say release all the money. But if it's not in escrow, now the judge has to go to the buyer and say write a check, buyer, and the buyer's going to be pretty upset about that. But he's going to have to do it. Right, Rachel, critical date timeline.
But Craig, we also mentioned too that the seller needs to know that all that money is not theirs.
Thank you. Yes. So remember, your listing agreement, which is the contract between the brokerage and the seller, says, and for good reason, don't wimp out on this one.
Yep.
For good reason, that seller would not have the opportunity to get that retained deposit if you didn't sell the house and do the job, right? That's called unjust enrichment.
Mm-hmm.
So our contract says we're entitled to 50% of retained deposits, not to exceed the amount of our commission. So $45,000 deposit, 50% is $22,500. That happens to be less than our commission on this deal. So we're entitled to $22,500 of that earnest money. And I hope the seller gets it because we're entitled to ours. Now, too often agents, no offense to any of you, feel bad about collecting money when you didn't make a sale. But the fact of the matter is, read chapter 475, you all went to real estate school. Our commission is earned at time of contract. We agree to get paid at time of closing, but our commission is earned at time of contract. So when that contract gets signed, that's why commission advances will advance your commissions because they're due when it went under contract. So I just don't like them. Oh, I just feel bad taking the money. Bullshit. If they wouldn't have had that money, if you didn't find that buyer and go through all those motions, right? And it's really kind of cool when you get paid your commission and then you put it back on the market and sell it again to get paid another commission on the same house. Try it. It feels good. I've done it. It really does. All right. What else we got in there, Thomas?
The transaction, you had a agent call you about the transaction broker.
Oh, that one's fun. Yeah, that was okay. Let's jump into that real quick. So this is, and I don't want to, I'm not going to name any names, and I'm not going to share my screen, but let's just call it stupid agent question of the day. Okay, so here it goes. Good morning, Craig. I showed a property to a client a couple of times. They have not yet pulled the trigger. I have another client that wants to see it. Is this ethical? It's a biggie. I would hate to lose this one. Okay. So where does the confusion from this come from? Angie, you're my buyer. I show you 123 Annie Street, and you're thinking about it. And out of the blue, I get contacted by Susie, who wants to see 123 Annie Street. Is there any conflict at all with me showing Susie that house? None at all. Does it matter if I'm a transaction broker or a single agent? If I'm a single agent, I represent you. But even in the single agent notice, it says, buyer beware, agent may come across other customers who want to see the same house, and they're going to show that house. So there's no unethicalness about unethicalness. Is that a word? There's nothing unethical about showing the same house to multiple buyers when you're a buyer's agent. They're all different client, right? And everybody has the right. Now, what you can't do is say, hey, Angie, Susie's getting really hot. I think she's going to write. She's coming in at full price. If you want it, you better come in higher, because that would be putting one party's interest to the detriment of another. So we can't do that, but you can absolutely 100% sell that question. And this is what I like to do. So when people ask me questions, I like to answer them. And I typically will ask another question back. And I wrote back, yes, it is ethical, whether you're a transaction broker or a single agent. Even the single agent notice explains that this may happen. You just can't tell one party what the other party is thinking. And then the next response was, thank you for the quick response. Am I a transaction broker if it's another C21 office listing? Which tells me that there's some confusion, right? And that's what I want to clear up the confusion.
We were talking about the transition to transaction.
Yeah. Well, Century 21 Beggins is a brokerage company. Century 21 Jim White is another brokerage company. Coldwell Banker is another brokerage company. Keller Williams is another brokerage company. All we're concerned about is Century 21 Beggins.
Beggins.
Right? Because we're one brokerage company, mostly under my name, which does beg the question, because Jeff is the broker for BE3 offices, but it's close enough. We're going to consider ourselves transaction brokers in that case. But it's your brokerage company. So if Angie wants to sell Susie's listing and we're in the same house, that's why we have a single agent listing agreement with consent to transition to transaction brokerage built into the listing agreement. So we don't have to go back to the seller every time and change it.
Correct.
So that's it. But if it's Century 21 Jim White or Century 21, another one, Circle or whoever they are, they're not ours. So we can 100% go single agent against them and not have to worry about transaction broker issues. Right. So let's make sure everybody gets it. Just the fact that question came up means there's still confusion around agency in real estate. Right. Working on this big project I've been working on, and I've got to co-list it with a Coldwell Banker agent. And Coldwell Banker doesn't allow single agency. So we have to have the identical listing agreements. So I'm going to do a transaction broker listing agreement on this property, which means we're a transaction broker. And I was talking to the Coldwell Banker agent, and she said, yeah, that's just a game you guys play to try to get more listings. And I said, yes, exactly. We want to provide more value, so we beat you in the field. Right. But I can't do that because we have to have the same listing agreement. But that's what they're saying. Oh, you don't need single agency. That's just makes it more complicated. No, it doesn't make it more complicated. It makes it more protective. All right. But that made me concerned that we had an agent that thinks that way, which means we're not making ourselves clear on that. Andrea, are you raising your hand to say something? I can allow you to talk if you'd like. Yeah, Lauren said the easy way to remember it is in-house, we're transaction broker. In-house means under the Beggins umbrella, we are transaction brokers. Not under the Century 21 umbrella, under the Beggins umbrella.
Right.
Okay, you don't want to do that, so take that off. I don't want to do that. Good. Okay. There's more coming. Where's my pen? I need to check off my list. Okay, we did the escrow agent and why 50% is retained. Okay, this is just sometimes, I'm going to say this again and again and again. And Thomas, you heard me say it 1,000 times.
Mhm.
Hard to read. This is from my Vistage group. It's hard to read the prescription when you're inside the bottle, right?
Mhm.
You can't do it. You get so bogged down in all this stuff. So I got a question from an agent, and it was, she's trying to do a really good job, and she did. So she sold a house, and she got a $5,000 earnest money deposit, and she's got a $5,000 additional deposit, and she wants to make the deposit hard and release to the seller, which is strong because the deposit is a deposit. It has to go through earnest money release in order to be released. Once it's released to the seller, it's hard. You can say it's hard, it's non-refundable, but the escrow agent's not going to give it away unless it's signed off by all parties, right? They're just not going to do it. They can't. It's treble damages if they screw up, and it ain't going to happen. So, but in this particular case, it was a home sale contingency.
Correct.
So the home sale contingency kind of overrides because it says this contract is subject to the buyer selling their current home within a period of time. So we really can't ask for a non-refundable deposit on a subject to contract because it creates a conflict, right? So sometimes you have to slow down and just think, okay, so yes, you can get the initial deposit, get the additional deposit after the inspections, but you're still going to be held responsible for the home sale contingency, which when you read addendum, whatever it is, it's called home sale contingency. It says the buyer has until X date, blank, fill in the blank, to sell their
Correct.
house. If they don't sell their house within that period of time, then the seller has 3 days to either cancel them or the
Mhm.
buyer has 3 days to remove all their contingencies,
Correct.
put up an additional deposit and close. So you
Mhm.
want that time to be as short as possible. Now, our agent did a good job. She researched the listing that was going to be sold. It's priced very well. She talked to the listing agent who seems pretty sharp, and they expected to go under contract very quickly. Haven't we've been seeing contracts go under contract, houses go under contract pretty quickly? Big time lately. I talked to Angelique yesterday. She said the hot sheet's going to be impressive today. So I can't wait for 11 o'clock to roll around. Because we've had some really banner days in the last couple of weeks, 19, 24, 19, 16, some big days.
So, Craig, can I ask you a question on that? So it was a contingency, but was the home already under contract?
No, it's not.
It's not. So it continues to sell. Wow.
Yep. They get it
That's
45,
interesting. Sorry?
they give it 45 days to go under contract and sell.
Interesting.
And our agent did talk to the listing agent. The agent feels confident that it will go under contract quickly and close within that time frame. It was a March 28th closing date, I think.
I have a problem with that. I don't know if I could do that just because there's no certainty with
No,
the
there's none.
closing. Yeah.
But this house has already been on the market for over 100 days.
Okay.
So it's been rejected. They've had offers, but they've been lower.
Gotcha.
This offer came in higher because of its weakness.
Sure.
So I said, worst case, you're taking it off the market for 30 days. You can always cancel them and put it back on the market, but it's the best offer you had and all your other offers have been lower. So it's like the scales of justice, right? You got to weigh
Mm,
them in and out. You're
sure.
probably not going to get another offer that's higher than this in the next 30 days because you haven't done it in the first 100 days. If this buyer is really willing to do that and you're going to get more money, are you willing to take the ride? And in this
Right.
case, take the ride, right? Now, is
Yeah,
it
I
right or
understand.
wrong?
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Is it right or wrong? No, it
No,
depends on the
no.
situation.
Correct.
But it's our
But
job to clear the clutter. Here's what it means.
I can understand why the agent wanted to do the non-refundable, but because of the contingency trumping that, it didn't make any sense because they have to sell in order to close.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes, I told her let that one go. Don't even
Correct.
try to get non-refundable. It's not going to happen.
Correct.
Although you could make it happen, but it's not likely to happen. It's
Sure.
too complicated. Chris said, I'd like to create a home to sell, and also a home to close contingency in the contract within 15 days or 30 days. The seller receives the right to cancel the contract. Yeah, sell and close is important. And I think, well, no, the addendum only says the house is under contract or is not under contract. It doesn't say, it says that's to sell. It doesn't say you have to close, right?
Correct.
So you should clarify that. Actually, FAR should clarify that because we needed to close because most likely get the funds in order to make the transaction happen.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, to sell in like 15 days. So then if it doesn't go under contract, you put the home back on the market.
And then we only lose 15 days on the market, which is not the end of the world.
Correct.
Okay, the last thing I want to cover, because it's 9:32, but I want to cover it because we had an issue. And I just want you guys to know, there's some obligations that are a part of being a part of our franchise. And we've got rules to follow. The brand marks are important and they're not to be, for lack of a better word, bastardized. So we've hired some people lately that have come from other companies and they're used to doing their own personal branding and marketing. And more power to you, do that, but you have to know what the rules are. So I'm gonna give you a quick little glance of what the rules are, because as we expand throughout the state, we're creating some enemies and they like to report us for things. And we're really not doing anything wrong, but sometimes our agents are doing things wrong. So I want to just give you just it's a 2-minute thing. But if you go to, and I'm going to share my screen now. Am I sharing my screen?
Yes.
Okay, this is going to be released next week by Jimmy, but I'm going to give you a preview. It's called the THE nextlevelu.com. This is going to replace our learning center. So everything's going to be here. So you're going to log in. You're going to have your Century 21 BE password information to get in. You're going to say whether you're a BE3 agent or a Beggins agent, because the logos are going to be different and a couple little things are different, but everything else is the same. And as you scroll through, you get all these opportunities. You come down to the marketing hub, and in the marketing hub, it'll say brokerage logos. And this is what I'm talking. So while you guys are getting creative with your Canvas and all the fancy marketing stuff you're doing with your Moxie and all that stuff, we got to know what the rules are. And there's really just 2 really simple rules. So you click down here, it says select brokerage logos. And then here you go. You got Century 21 logos, Century 21 Beggins logos, and BE3 logos. So Mike and Jimmy and Angelique and Sam have all collaborated on this. And there's a lot of content in this site, guys. There's just a ton. And I'm not training the site. I'm just using it as a resource to show you with logos. So Century 21 logos first. So this is kind of cool wallpaper. If you want to use your Canva stuff, download these. This is what my boat is wrapped in. And it's all faded from light to dark. It looks really cool on the boat, right? And then this is what's called the seal. And there's different ways you can use the seal. Like see how this way it's partially cut off. And that's designed in the upper right-hand corner of a page. And this one's like squeezed over to the right, and there's black and there's gray. And those are the ones you're allowed to use. And all you do is right click, save image as, put it in your pictures, and then you've got the logos. So that's called the seal. And this is their new logo, came out, what, 3 or 4 years ago? I don't remember now, but it's probably 3 or 4 years ago. So the seal is a generic Century 21 mark. And you can use the seal. Actually, I'm sorry, I said that wrong. You can't use the seal without the DBA, the logo, right? Because we're not Century 21. If we put a flyer out that says C21, the public is they're not sure what's really going on. What Century 21 are they dealing with? Are they dealing with Century 21 corporate? We're not allowed to represent Century 21 corporate. So we can't use the seal by itself. The next thing is we've got Century 21 Beggins logos. And this is the logo. And this is it. It used to be the house and all that stuff together. Now it's just Century 21 bolded all caps and then Beggins Enterprises. And then on the BE3 tab, it's going to say BE3, right? So it's Century 21 BE3. So the logo and the seal can't go together. So the seal is designed to be put somewhere on the page, and then Beggins Enterprises will be the logo someplace else, but they can't be touching each other, right? So this agent that we had put Century 21, but no DBA. The DBA is doing business as Beggins Enterprises, BE3, list with Beggins. That's the DBA. So we can't use Century 21 without the DBA attached to it. And this agent made a very pretty sign, but the sign said Century 21, didn't say the DBA. So the broker she left happened to be Century 21, And he reported us and I did corporate and all this other crap. And it's not our fault, but they didn't get approval on that sign. So if you have questions on the marks, get with me, get with Susie, go one of your managers, and we'll get it approved and tell you what you can or can't do. But we just don't want to get in trouble with Century 21. And then you've got gray logos and you got tan logos. And then you can, like this one I like, Mike's done, puts all of them together, just makes us look bigger and stronger and more interesting. There's different ways you can do it that are legal. And then you can see where's the next one? Oh, BE3 logos, same thing. It just says BE3. Where's the logos? They are. So they say BE3 instead of Beggins Enterprises. So that's kind of it. That's all I wanted to say, because essentially there are people that watch us and they do measure whether we do things right or wrong. But if you want to get into this next week, Jimmy's going to go through this with you and show you. It's powerful, guys. We've got so much resources in here for you to see. Rachel, you can also download the fonts, the color codes, and these logos, as well as the Fine Homes and Estates. Yeah, we've got a whole nother list of stuff. We're not done building everything out, but all that stuff will be in there at some point. Yeah, you want to use essential and correct branding. Because what if then you're Keller Williams? Have you ever noticed you can't tell the difference in what company they're with? And then there's also, and you need to know this too. I'm stop sharing now because we're about to wind up. Florida Real Estate Commission has passed laws. These teams have gotten, and I don't mean anything negative about teams in any way, shape, or form, because we have teams within our company too. But teams are agents that are still under the brokerage. And under Chapter 475, it's the broker who's responsible for the activities of the team, even though there's a team leader. So the broker really needs to manage the team leader to make sure the team leader is managing their team members, because it all falls under the broker. So a lot of teams have gotten very aggressive, and they've taken Keller Williams and shrunk it down to about this big on the bottom right-hand corner of the sign is a little KW. And then it's a big picture of them and their team name and their phone number, which may or may not be the brokerage phone number. And the Real Estate Commission is saying, wait a minute, this is misleading to the public. They need to know who the brokerage they're dealing with is, not the team, because the team doesn't have brokerage responsibilities, right? So it's misleading to the public. So you have to, now the Florida Real Estate Commission says, to get through this, the team information has to be no more than 50% of the sign, and the brokerage company needs to be at least 50%. And it's not my rule. I like it, but it has nothing to do. I didn't make it. I just have to relay what it is, and you can read about it. So 50% of the sign has to be the brokerage name and contact information, and then 50% can be the team and contact information. But you got to play by the rules, and they're going to start cracking down on this stuff because it's really out of control. As you drive around and you see these yard signs, you don't know what company they work for, and that's part of protecting the public. Now, the world has changed with the internet and all this other stuff, but like we just got in trouble. We hired we were recruiting an agent, and we have to scrub our list because we're not allowed to recruit Century 21 agents from other companies. Well, we found an agent, and there was no identifier about her at all about Century 21. She was a Sandy Shells Realty or something like that. There was no Century 21 reference whatsoever. So the broker called corporate to complain about us trying to recruit their agent. We're saying, tell your agent to use their marks so we know who they are. We can't do that. So just a little top of mind. It's not contract related, but it's something we're dealing with. I just want to make sure we're doing the right things right. Yeah, KW and the KW signs are microscopic, and that's not right. We should actually take a picture and report them. You pay for the recognition, be crazy not to do it. Yes, it is way out of control. Cool. Well, Thomas, I think we've exceeded our minutes by 10. I'm excited. Bob Pasquarello took my machine home last night, sat on the phone with Dell for an hour and a half while Dell remoted into my machine because it said my hard drive was missing, but it booted up and ran fine, and then it crashed. And it turns out it's an NVID video card, that driver that went bad. So they were able to zoom in and update it. And so it should be working today. So we'll get back to normal next week. So this is Friday. I did check the weather. It looks kind of gloomy. So you might have some slower open house traffic. But what happens when you have slow open house traffic? Get work done, right? I'm looking forward to it. So I'm usually outside as much as I can be on the weekends, but I'm stuck inside. I'm going to get organized. Last night, I got my inbox down to under 100 messages, which is a major accomplishment because I try to keep it down there, but it just grows too fast. So this weekend, I'll report on Monday and tell you how low I got if I'm stuck inside.
So Craig, the question was: is President's Day on Monday? Are we open or closed?
Ooh, You know, I'll talk to Joy. I don't know. I don't think we have to honor President's Day. So either way, it doesn't matter. We'll be
Yeah.
doing training. We're doing our mastermind on Monday, and the offices will be accessible through Kissy. Whether receptionists are answering the phones or not, we don't really get that many phone calls every day because you all have these little things in your pocket that ring.
Sure. Title's closed.
Yep.
Right.
Title's closed. Sure. Yeah, all the banking related stuff are closed. 2 more messages. Remember always old car. Mike, I'm not sure what that means. But we are having our mastermind on Monday. We're not letting up, guys. We got things to go, and it's working as far as I can tell because we're exceeding. I got a note from Title yesterday. We're tracking over 70 orders. We did 46 orders in January. We're tracking 70 orders in February, which is huge. And watch the hot sheets. Watch the hot sheets today. This is exciting stuff we're going through right now. So, and more stuff coming on the future, which is even better. So just hold on tight because it's going to be a ride. The party's coming. Hope you partake. Happy Friday, Thomas. Any closing remarks?
Happy Friday. Pick up your poop.
Pick up your poop or your dog's gonna get DNA tested and you're gonna get a fine. All right, guys. Thanks.
Bye.